can see where that's coming from. He's a very talented and skillful player in attack. And this week, the only real defensive mishap came on the obstruction try, so he got away with it. Really, yeah. What did St. David have to say?
St. David said, "Well, that was bloody horrible. Wigan controlled the ruck speed, bashed us up front. Flower was excellent,
yes, he was.
And with both Dom Peyroux out and Morgan off early, the Pies with Esgray prominent waltzed for our right side like a knife through butter time after time. Even so, we could have been properly in the game had we taken our chances in the first half. Ho-hum, onwards." What a beautifully written review.
Paul Chamberlain said, "After Thursday, at least we stopped me bleaching my eyes out. Great game this, and very happy for Sean Wayne after the way he has been messed around. His passion on the sideline shows it's ludicrous that the support is losing to Scotland Rugby Union."
Yeah, and POB 1976 said, "A great game and well-deserved victory for Wigan. Thought the referee handled the game well, and the obstruction rule needs to be sorted out."
Yeah, I mean the game could have run differently if Louis McCarthy-Scarsbrook try had stood. I think it was similar-ish to the one at Wembley in that it was Douglas who ran the line, and he kind of floated his line in the way enough of the Wigan defender, and definitely got way into the Wigan line and made sure he kind of pushed across the front of the Wigan defender as he was doing it. That I think that the right call was made, but yeah, I wouldn't have been broken-hearted in terms of from a rugby league perspective if it was allowed to have gone also. Although similarly, if John Bateman throws a pass, whether it's forward or not, the video referee can't turn around and say it's a knock-on when it's a pass. So interesting both ways on those ones. I fucking loved this game, Tim. I can't. I was absolutely buzzing to get home and watch it again straight away after I got home. The noise from the crowd was fantastic.
And that did come across on the broadcast as well. It did have a real crackle.
Sometimes you don't know if it's coming across on the broadcast or not when you're there and you're part of it and you're loving life, because you're just getting carried away. But it did really come through on the broadcast. I think the Wigan players clearly loved what was going on. Clearly were happy for each other, were with each other. George Williams was fantastic. Thomas Lulawai, moving back into the halves, is having his most consistent run of form since probably the very start of last season when he was in the halves as well. He was then poor for most of last season. Maybe he can only do a short burst in the halves and be consistently good, but we've put it in at the right time. I think Sam Powell had his best game of the season alongside Greenwood, Hamlin, Sargentson as well. John Bateman was as consistently brilliant as he has been. I've moved my mindset now to thinking the three-man is it a three-man shortlist they do for the three-man shortlist for the Man of Steel should be Bateman, McShane and Roby is where I'm at. At time
would struggle to argue any of those, to be honest.
And Bateman was fantastic in this game again.
For all-round performance, for consistency from game one to game, I'd be inclined to go Roby.
Oh yeah,
I think he's just been utterly fantastic
and I also
again
think
this season.
There's still a place for Barber in there because he was so fantastic for say 18, 19 rounds that you can't.
It's when they do the voting though, isn't it? It'll cloud their judgment too much.
From a St Helens perspective in this game, I don't think they were like god awful, but Wigan, when there was a spell in the second half when Bateman's try came around where Wigan were just battering them with the ball and without the ball, and it was forcing Saints into making bad decisions even when they had good opportunities. And then, I mean, Matty Lees has had a bit of a breakthrough year, hasn't he? He has to be dropped after that game because he just couldn't tackle anything in a Wigan shirt, it felt like, for a period there. In sort of towards the back end of that first half, and the John Bateman try was a direct reflection of that. We need to hover just for a second on Tommy Makinson, don't we? Because
what ridiculous skill for that try.
There was an element of Oliver Gildart showing his naivety and not being a winger and that sort of stuff. He thought he could just tap it over his head and sort of tip it over the bar, as it were. He needed to smash it down into the floor, then run and boot it. Not try and do something gentle like that, because Tommy Mack gets so high, rarely misses, and yeah, he got a little bit lucky that he landed in bounds, to be honest. But there's an element of the repetitiveness that he must train and practice that, and we've seen him
exactly.
Many times. That there's an element of thinking he has that body control to.
He'll be in that corner, and he'll know to the nanocentimeter what's good and what's not, and he'll be able to correct himself.
Yeah,
because he will have jumped that jump.
Yeah,
500 times.
It's another lesson for all supporters in the ground that the big screen is not quite the level of definition you want it to be, because it looks for all money for us that his foot was on the line because of the blurriness of it. But then when you see it in crisp HD when you get home, there was, it was half a
watching
centimetre there.
It was like you could see the green line of
just about
between the boot and the white line.
That was utterly fantastic. And do you know what? One of the players whose name hasn't come up in this was Romain Navarrete, who also probably was close to his best game in a Wigan shirt this season. And he consistently, particularly in his first spell, ran at James Roby. It got to the point where I was like, can't he try and run at a gap? Because I was getting annoyed that we weren't quite making the inroads. But I think the proof in the pudding kind of came later on, and I was wrong in sort of saying... Because Thompson runs at gaps. He runs in between people consistently. He always has a target that's going to drive him a little bit more forward and get him to get a quick player of the ball as well. And I was like, why can't our forwards do that? Why is Navarrete just constantly running right at Roby? But he did it for a reason, and it worked. Roby's decision making wasn't as great as it normally is, not consistently anyway. There was a particular occasion in the sort of first half when Saints had a good spell just before Sargent's second try, where 2 times in that period he tried to go on his own or dropped it off to people where there was where Wigan's defence was clearly dominant around that area, around close to the ruck, and it wasn't making the right calls. He is still a majestic player though. There was one point in the second half when he was running away from the Wigan line and he picked the ball up at dummy half and made both markers go the same way, which was the wrong way. And I just thought, Roby can do that so much easier than any other hooker I've ever seen play the game can do that. But ultimately, Wigan did wear him out a little bit down that defence, and Romain Navarrete did a fantastic job of that in particular, I would say.
Yeah, I particularly thought the key highlights for me were Greenwood in that first half in particular. Just absolute wow player all round.
Into the golden edge.
Yeah, he was particularly golden.
He carried it into the second half as well, though, Greenwood, to be fair, because that offload, the line and then the offload for Gildart's try, and that was an absolutely fantastic try. As good as Makinson's was for his piece of skill,
Greenwood, wasn't it?
For the overall setup and play, Sargentson's first and Greenwood's, and Gildart's try were equal in my eyes. Yeah, sorry, you were saying about John Bateman.
Yeah, John Bateman's strength, I thought, throughout the game just came across again as just being outstanding and just brilliant. He's such a great player to watch, and he's going to be a loss when he does go down under, but he's coming back, so it's all okay.
Well, we don't know what will happen there, do we, really? And I think we all know the truth that is we don't know what's going to happen there. But fantastic anyway. I could talk about it for ages, but I've talked about it enough. It was a great game, though. Stats. Wigan made 11 breaks to 4 and scored 6 tries to 2. They had a big 401 more metres at 1.5 metres per carry, better average gain. Saints fell below 90% in the team tackle success rates. For the winning side, Wigan, Ollie Gildart had a try assist, 7 tackles, 219 metres and 2 clean breaks. Tom Davies grabbed a richly deserved try. He had 141 metres and 2 clean breaks as well. John Bateman with a try, 41 tackles, 10 tackle busts, 128 metres and 4 successful offloads. And man of the match, Joe Greenwood. Can't say just how much he has improved from his first performance where he looked, the rustiest thing out there you could imagine.
Rusty spoon, if you will.
But he got 1 try assist, 137 metres, 2 clean breaks, 3 successful offloads, and looked physically capable of continuing for the whole 80 minutes, which he did not look when he first came into the side. For the losing St Helens side, probably the 2 players I'd singled out are the 2 players that got the stats as well. Tommy Mack, 2 tries, 101 metres, 3 successful offloads, and James Roby, 51 tackles and 138 metres. Okay, 1 game left in the Super League Super 8s. to cover. I'm afraid all I've seen is the tries from Castleford versus Catalan Dragons. It went the way we were all expecting, a big win for the home side against the all-partied out Catalan Dragons. It was 36 points to 4 in favour of the Tigers. 7,658 were on a Saturday night to watch this. Is it Greg Dolan?
Greg Dolan, new full-timer Greg Dolan.
New full-time referees that we think were already appointed as full-time referees 2 months ago, from press releases I remember reading. But there you go. Or maybe they were just appointed to the Super League panel then, and now they've been made permanent.
Yeah, could be that.
Anyway, fan views.
Yeah, so Fat Boy Rob said a routine win for the champions for at least one more week against the Cup winners. Luke Gale created tries for fun on his return. Benny Roberts looked solid as well, and Eden still thinks it's 2017. Well, at least he doesn't think it's 2015. Add to that another top defensive performance. I may be a tad biased, but I think Cass will go unbeaten to the end of the season. #COYF.
Adam Conley 87 said an aggressive defensive performance set the platform for a comfortable victory for the Tigers despite the game being scrappy in parts. Cass lifted by the return of Luke Gale showed sparks of brilliance to score some scintillating tries. With their big guns returning, if Cass can gain some momentum in the final 4 games, they may be in a great shout for a return to Old Trafford. Fantastic wording on that one, Adam. I love that one. Yeah, they did score some scintillating tries. They were helped a little bit by a couple of sin bins from the Dragons side, but the Dragons were never really in it, in all fairness. The icing on the cake was that Oliver Holmes try. Great team try from the kickoff.
It was, yeah. And one thing that did make me laugh was David Mead's attempt to tackle at one point where he basically just patted one of the Cass players on the back. I don't know if you saw that on the highlights. It just looked like that couldn't be asked. He just sort of wafted at him with one arm. It was like, yeah, you keep running, lad. You keep running.
It didn't stand out to me, but what did stand out to me? He was playing. I think he was playing at fullback in this game, actually, if I'm right. And was it the Jake Truman try? Because that was remarkably straightforward for Jake Truman to have scored. So it could have been on that one. That one was pretty soft. That rounded out the first half, and probably by that point it was all good and done for the Dragons, who are in great form. And I think we have to be wary. It's almost like a little bit unfortunate that we're trending towards a Wigan versus Castleford semi-final, because those two teams feel like the teams with the potential for the momentum to build. Both sides are getting key players back as we drive towards those semi-finals. Both teams are playing some nice rugby league, and both teams are setting a quite intense defensive agenda as well. So yeah,
it's an interesting one as well. Who can I deal with more? You being miserable or Rob being smug? Which way round do we want it?
Well, we all know that Rob is 3 things. He's a great bloke, he's a terrible loser, and he's an even worse winner. But no, do you know what? They're going to entertain us again towards the end of the season, which they weren't consistently doing this year. Greg Eden's back in form. We'll get to that in the stats, because under 1,000 metres and under 90% tackle success rate for Catalan, regular SLP listeners will know that usually means a heavy defeat. 7 more breaks, 375 more metres, 2.2 more metres per carry, and 5.6% better team tackle success. All big stat wins for the Tigers in a convincing victory. Individually, Greg Eden, 3 tries, 5 tackles, 170 metres, 6 clean breaks. Paul McShane, 1 try assist, 48 tackles, 15 mark tackles, no missed tackles from Paul McShane. His defensive efforts have really been a cornerstone to what he's done this year. It's kind of reminding me in that regard of like Sam Powell of Wigan's grand final winning season. Apart from Paul McShane has a little bit more vision going the other way than Sam Powell demonstrates regularly, I would say, in a try assist sums that up. James Clare 131 metres, Mike McMeekin 106 metres. For the Catalan side, Alric da Costa 43 tackles, 11 marker tackles, and Greg Bird, the returning Greg Bird, 108 metres.
How many of the Catalan players do you think were genuinely still pissed? Because there'll be at least a couple who would have still had alcohol in their bloodstream.
Well, they threw in a couple of people who didn't play in the cup final, but I'm not suggesting for any second that Vince DePaul and Greg Bird were not part of the party. So